Morning, everybody. Hope you're all doing okay and bearing up in these difficult times. I am conscious I haven't chosen the most uplifting of topics for actually this time of lockdown, the problem of evil. So my apologies for that. But this is a nice, fairly straightforward topic that you can, I think, negotiate at home with some guidance. And it may be a topic also that you've come across before at GCSE. Okay, so what I'm going to do is just quickly go through a few of the slides that I would have used in class. I've set the work on Edmodo for you to do at your own leisure. Alright, so I'm not going to spend too long on these images. You've seen many of these things before, just kind of examples of evil that we have experienced already in our world. And I'm sure a lot of you may have come across the Moors murderers, Myra Hindley and Ian Brady, as examples of perhaps human evil. And there's a little link there if you want to watch that. All right, so we're aware there's two types of evil. There is the evil that's caused by humans and sort of results of free actions of humans, and then there's natural evil that is a result of the way nature works. And I suppose, in a sense, coronavirus kind of fits into a little bit of both, but particularly in terms of natural evil, obviously. And very topical. Okay, so there are two main problems that you need to be aware of. There is the problem of evil as a logical problem, and then there is also the problem of evil as an evidential problem. Right, sorry, I'm going back there. There's the problem of evil as a logical problem. And this is really, I suppose, an a priori argument. We're not looking at the world itself and sort of examining the evidence and experience of evil. We're just simply looking at the very fact that there is evil, and then the claim by religious people that there is a God who is all-loving, all-powerful. And there seems to be an incompatibility between those statements. So it's an a priori argument. Okay, so if we get up the slides here, we can see, all right, that if religious people are claiming that there is a God who is all good and all powerful, now this seems to be logically inconsistent with the existence of evil in the world. In short, they seem to be unable to exist together. Okay, and this is sometimes stated in this way. If we have a look at this one, if God is all-loving, then of course that would mean that God would want to create a world without evil, suffering, or at least if there is evil in the world, would want to do something about it, like a kind of parent would want to try and stop their own child suffering. Equally, if God is all-powerful, then God should be able to stop evil, or at least create a world without evil. Now, evil exists, so there's a sort of incompatibility between these three statements, an inconsistent triad. And this is associated with an ancient Greek philosopher called Epicurus. He was one of the first people to put this forward, but also was put very powerfully and clearly in a book by J.R. Mackie, Evil and Omnipotence. Okay, so this is the Epicurus statement. Is God willing to prevent evil but not able to? Then he is not omnipotent. Is God able to prevent evil but not willing to? Then he is malevolent. Is God able to prevent evil and willing to? Then why is there evil? Okay, that's just another version of that. Right, okay, so we'll be looking at solutions to this over the coming week sort of lessons, but this is something Stephen Law put together. He's a kind of recent philosopher. Some believe the logical problem can be dealt with fairly easily. All we need to do is really focus on the fact that perhaps suffering is there for some greater good that outweighs it, okay? That it can be sort of justified in that sense. Now that may sound paradoxical, but it's not. For instance, you might say that compassion and sympathy are great virtues, and it's important that people exhibit these virtues. But of course, they're not going to actually show those unless there are people who are suffering. So we're seeing this at the moment with coronavirus. People, on the one hand, are being greedy and panic buying, etc. But on the other hand, we're seeing some great stories of people reaching out to those who are vulnerable and helping each other in the community. Okay, so some might say that the good outweighs the evil, or does it? Okay, that's what we're going to explore. Right. Okay, and then there is the evidential problem of evil, which is an a posteriori argument. Okay, because this time we're simply looking at the evidence of evil in the world, the sheer quantity of evil in the world, and asking, does this support the claim of a loving and all-powerful God? Okay, so there is an extract from John Stuart Mill. He's most one of the scholars associated with this. You may remember when we looked at the design argument. This overlaps here, and we looked at J.S. Mill. Now, in the textbook, the Libya Ahluwalia textbook, which I've scanned onto Moodle on page 128, there is an extract from Mill's writing. Okay, and he says things like this: the order of nature, insofar as unmodified by man, is such as no being, whose attributes are justice and benevolence, would have made with the intention that his rational creatures should follow it as an example. In other words, that nature is such that it doesn't reflect the kind of world that we'd expect of a loving, powerful, and just God. He goes on to say, nature impales man, breaks them as if on the wheel, casts them to be devoured by wild beasts, burns them to death, crushes them with stones like the first Christian martyrs. Okay, so he's picking out examples here of nature, how it seems to kind of damage humans in different ways. Think about tsunamis, earthquakes, think about viruses that we're experiencing at the moment. It has a very indiscriminate effect on humans. Nature, he says, nature does this with the most supercilious disregard both of mercy and of justice, emptying her shafts upon the best and the noblest indifferently with the meanest and worst. It's indiscriminate. Anybody is affected by it. Doesn't matter whether they're good or bad people. In fact, sometimes it's the good people who seem to suffer most. And then he says, not only does it take life, but next to taking life, equal to it, according to a high authority, is taking the means by which we live. And nature does this too on the largest scale, and with the most callous indifference. A single hurricane destroys the hopes of a season. The flight of locusts or an inundation desolates a district. A trifling chemical change in an edible root starves a million of people. That's sort of reference to Ireland and the potato famine there. So small impacts in nature can then take away the ability for humans to grow crops, to survive, to be able to look after themselves. And so this is another kind of aspect of nature. All right. Now there's a few little clips there. If you don't like seeing nature animals attack each other, then perhaps avoid those. But there's some little clips just showing kind of this aspect of nature, this cruel aspect of nature. Okay. So the evidential argument takes the evidence of our experience of the world and really asks the question: what's the most plausible explanation for these observations in the world? Is it that the world is the work of an omnipotent and omnibenevolent God, or that this world is better explained by drawing the conclusion that it's the work of a God who doesn't have those attributes, or in fact there's no God at all? And of course Mill is suggesting quite strongly that it's the latter, that the evidence of evil in our world, the suffering in our world, suggests that there is no God, or if there's a God, it's certainly not a benevolent, just God. Okay, those who support his argument believe that theists can not provide a justification for the evils in the world. All right, and any argument that does put forward, it fails. Okay, so therefore, evil and suffering makes it highly unlikely that God exists. And this is a strong argument. Many people perhaps don't believe in a God for this reason. And whether they've had their own experience of suffering, or they have seen and witnessed this on a large scale. Okay. Right. Okay. So that's just a quick summary then of the reading about the logical and the evidential problems of evil. Now, what we need to do is we're going to look at the different responses to this, particularly the ideas of Augustine, okay, an early church father, another early church father called Irenaeus, and then a kind of more contemporary philosopher, John Hick, who was a British philosopher of religion, a religious man, Christian man, who developed Irenaeus' ideas. And then there's also Richard Swinburne, who has a similar kind of similar kind of ideas to John Hick. All right. But I think the first place to start is Genesis chapter 3, because both Augustine and Irenaeus really base their ideas on this story, which is really a story about the problem of evil. It is, I think, it's one of the first kind of accounts in literature trying to deal with why is there suffering. Okay. Now, some people will read it literally as a story about two people, Adam and Eve, who rebel against God. Many people would suggest actually it's a myth, it's a metaphor, kind of, if you like, that it was written not as a literal account of problems of evil, but a story that's really addressing the question, why is it that humans suffer, right? And why is it that we experience hardship? And it's a story trying to deal with that and suggest some answers. So really, it's a story about us. Adam and Eve are us, humans, okay, not actually two literal people. But actually, I mean, just bear in mind that when Augustine's reading this, he does take it literally, right? And so that influences the way he reads it. Right. So what I'd like you to do next, really, in a sense, is have a look at the story in Genesis chapter 2 and 3. Okay, you'll find there's a link I've put on the Edmodo for the Bible of Aremus. If you don't have a Bible at home, you can find the story there. Have just a read through it. Read it slowly and steadily, okay, and just take in the words. And then what I'd like you to do is have a go at just answering those questions, okay, just to help you interpret the story and become familiar with it. And then that will set you up nicely for moving on to Augustine. All right, I think that's enough at the moment. I hope that keep me informed if I'm asking too much of you for now, then please let me know. What we'll be doing next is kind of going on to look at the theodicies and what those are and looking at Augustine. Okay, so that's coming next, but we'll reserve that for later. All right, okay. Hope that helps. Bye now.